Welcome to A Year in the Bible with Daily Grace. My name is Kristen.
And my name is Katie. And we want to spend a few minutes a day with you walking through the New Testament, one chapter at a time. This year, we will fix our gaze upon Christ so that we may know him, not only with our minds, but with our hearts.
Together, we will learn that who Jesus is changes everything.
Hello. Welcome back, friends. I hope you have been enjoying the Gospel of Mark just as much as I have. My name is Katie, and I am one of the co-hosts here on A Year in the Bible podcast, where we are reading one chapter of the New Testament a day for 5 days a week. Are you ready to dive into Mark 5? At the end of Mark 4, we saw Jesus calm a very violent storm at sea. That scene began a section which carries over into Mark 5, a section which demonstrates Jesus' power over seemingly untamable forces. As Mark 5 begins, we see Jesus encountering a demon-possessed man. Notice how much Mark emphasizes this man's strength. No one could restrain him or subdue him, even with a chain. He is bent on self-destruction. His situation is desperate, and no one can do anything for him. Well, almost no one. Mark's description of this man shows us that Jesus is up against a challenge here. And on top of everything that Mark has already told us about this man, we now learn that Jesus is up against a legion of demons. Despite this numerical imbalance, though, the demons feel threatened. Their words, "What would you have to do with me?" are essentially, "Mind your own business, Jesus." They're trying to flex here, but even they realize that they are outmatched. Despite their strength, Jesus sends them out of the man. Now, there are a lot of questions here that Mark does not address. Why did the demons not want to leave this area? Why did they want to enter the pigs? Why did Jesus allow them to enter pigs and then destroy the pigs? Mark doesn't speak to this directly, but while we shouldn't downplay the loss of these pigs, we learn that the life of this man, this image bearer of God whom these demons have been torturing, is more valuable to God than these pigs, valuable though as they may be. When the people of the region hear what's happened, they are terrified, just like the disciples had been when they had watched Jesus calm the storm. And they asked him to leave. Such a remarkable display of strength might have intimidated them. Maybe they're freaked out about the economic impact of losing the pigs and they don't want Jesus to do any more damage. Whatever the case, no one is celebrating this man's recovery. Speaking of this man, he wants to become a follower of Jesus, but Jesus gives him another job, to go and tell his people how much Jesus has done for them. And Mark tells us that he goes preaching about Jesus in the Decapolis, a region primarily consisting of Gentiles. This is worth noting because Mark 7, Jesus will return to the Decapolis, and we are given a hint there of how impactful this man's testimony had been. In the next scene, Jesus is approached by Jairus, who begs Jesus to come and heal his daughter. Like the demon-possessed man, the disciples in the boat, his situation is desperate. His daughter is sick, and she's on the verge of death. While Jesus is traveling to Jairus' home, we meet a woman with an illness that, like the lepers, rendered her ceremonially unclean and made her an outcast in society. Here is another hopeless situation. She's been ill for 12 years, spent everything that she has to be healed. And not only has she not been healed, she's gotten worse. She's suffering, she's broke, and she's alone. So she sees in Jesus one last shot for healing. She enters the crowd and she touches his cloak, and she's healed. And that's when Jesus stops and asks who touched him. Now imagine being in Times Square on New Year's Eve and asking this question. A better question would be, who hasn't touched you, Jesus? This woman is probably hoping to slip in and out, but Jesus wants to shine a spotlight on her, which absolutely terrifies the woman. Is he mad at her? What about the crowd? She is ceremonially unclean, and she's been among them. That'd be like knowing that you're contagious and going into a crowded area. Are they going to be furious with her? But Jesus doesn't want to shame her. He wants to demonstrate to her and to all those watching what healed her. His cloak didn't heal her. Her faith in him healed her. He is making an example out of her in the best way by showing her what faith in him can accomplish. And he tells her to go in peace, that is, to be restored and to be reintegrated into life, into the community. Jesus gives her life back. Now, try to imagine Jairus while this is going on. He's in a hurry, but Jesus seems to be wasting time with this woman. But then his worst fear comes true. In the delay, he learns that his daughter has died. And he's been told, don't bother Jesus anymore. Translation, there's nothing more that Jesus can do. But instead, Jesus tells Jairus, don't be afraid, only believe. Amazingly, in this most hopeless and desperate of scenes we have considered in this section, Jesus takes the hand of the little girl, dead in her bed, and gives her her life back. But notice that Jesus isn't just content with bringing her back to life. In his tenderness, in his love, he wants to bring her strength back by telling people nearby to give her something to eat. What can we behold about Jesus here? First, Jesus is powerful. Mark has shown us that Jesus has authority over nature, over demons, over sickness, and even over death. Even in these scenarios in which Jesus is confronted with seemingly untamable forces, Jesus is never outmatched. Second, notice his gentle care for people. He cared for the man whom demons were harming. He cared for the woman who was sick and isolated and left with no resources. And he cared for Jairus' daughter who passed away, bringing joy to a home that was mourning. And finally, let us put our faith in him. Notice the interplay of faith and fear in these scenes. When he calmed the waves, he asked his disciples why they were afraid and if they still had no faith. The townspeople, just like the disciples, also were afraid when confronted with Jesus' power in healing the demon-possessed man. Jesus assured the fearful woman that it was her faith that healed her. And he told Jairus not to fear, but to believe, to put his faith in Jesus. May we likewise put our faith in Jesus day by day, and may that faith in him drive out our fears. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of A Year in the Bible with Daily Grace. Don't forget to check out the show notes for helpful links and resources related to today's episode. And make sure you are following at Daily Grace Podcast on Instagram for more A Year in the Bible content, and at the Daily Grace Co. for all things Bible study resources. We can't wait to study again with you tomorrow. Bye, friends.